my friends, and welcome back to Where Wendy Creates. Today we are going to be using these 4 blocks making a baby quilt. So we are going to make a whole bunch of 4 patches, and right now we're just chain stitching them together, and I am so excited about this. I want this to be a one-day project. I'm excited. Okay, my friends, so welcome back to Where Wendy Creates, and today we are just making 4 patch blocks to make a polka dot baby quilt. And we are just going to take these stacks and join them together. These are home cut blocks from fabrics in the 60s that we got yard sailing. And someone had gone through all the trouble of cutting up all of these blocks. And what is beautiful about these is you can go through some of them and see pencil marks on the sides where they've actually drawn the lines to then trim them out by scissors. So again, these blocks are probably pushing 30 to 50 years old. Closest I can identify them, I'm going to guess in the 70s or 80s. So this is kind of precious to put somebody else's dreams into a finished product. And these to me just scream baby quilt. So let's make baby's first quilt. And we are just chain stitching these blocks together. And then we're going to combine them with the 2 of these for a 4 patch block. And hoping we have enough of them to finish a baby quilt. We have not counted them, but their measures are approximately 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. And we're going to have to play these with kid gloves and resize and cut our final 4 patch before we combine them together. Because these were cut by hand, and I have run into a few of them like this one. We've got a slight bowed edge on that, and they're not truly 4 1/4. So if all of them were truly the identical, look at that pencil mark. Isn't that wonderful? Look at that pencil mark. That's a pencil mark with a cut, and that's a pencil mark on that blue one there. So again, really, really, really cool to find these in a yard sale. Again, the time that must have taken for someone to sit and mark all these and trim these out. And then never to have the joyous return of creating a quilt with these blocks. So I am very, see how this one is mismatched sizes as well. A lot of these pink ones are slightly smaller than the blue. So I am very excited to put these blocks together. And with them being the 4 1/4 inch size, really to get a nice toddler size quilt that's going to be useful for years to come, we want this big enough for a lap size. So we're probably looking at needing probably 128 minimum if I have some nice size borders, or probably close to 260 blocks to complete a nice size quilt, probably near the 60 by 60 range. I'll have to sit down and crunch some numbers and tell you specifics. But I think with these stacks, we're going to come up to that. And if I can get a very nice size toddler quilt size out of this, I'm going to be extremely happy. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take these colors and we're going to go over to our solids, and we're going to take a look at our solids and find out what I have in a solid closest to these colors that I can make for a border. So again, might want to lean towards the green if we don't know if it's going to a boy or a girl. But I'd love, if I had enough for 2 quilts, do one with a pink border and one with a blue border. But we're going to see. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's just keep chain stitching these and see what size quilt, since I did not count, what size quilt we come up with. All right, so welcome back. We're still working on the pinks and the blues. And again, I just can't help thinking how wonderful this is that we're putting these blocks together and creating a quilt, a homemade quilt for a grandbaby. And I'm sure as you're looking at this, you've got a couple of grandbabies in mind. Or a couple of children, couple of nieces and nephews that would love a lap quilt. Wouldn't this be incredible just to be a lap size quilt and our child drag it over to friends' houses when they go for sleepovers? Or treasure it so much that they take it off to college when they go, or even give it to their kids. A quilt is a time capsule. A quilt is a collectible item that should stay in the family or with loved ones, someone who's going to treasure it. And hopefully you're putting labels on the back of your quilts and telling when this quilt was made and that it was made with love. Your hands touch every piece. This is a heritage quilt. Every quilt is. Oh, I'm loving this. This is going to be such a beautiful, beautiful piece. I just think these are so delicate, precious little blocks. And again, you can see that these sizes do not match. But again, they were cut by hand, by pencil, by ruler, by pencil, by scissors, not with a rotary cutter. So this is just spectacular. And I ran out of bobbin thread, so I'm just going to flip it over with some pastel pink that I had from a different project. But you can see that I am using pink in the top thread as well. And we are excitedly all done with the pinks and the blues. And now we're matching the kind of off brown with the off green. And we're going to be making these into 4 patches. And notice how I do hold it at the end, and that way we're not going off the fabric or further onto the fabric. We're staying right on that 1/4 inch. Okay, so we are putting together the green and the browns. And again, just doing a chain stitching. We're using our Singer heavy duty machine. And we're just going 1 4 1/4 inch block to the next. And again, I never recommend a 4 1/4 inch block unless your pattern calls for it. But that happens to be what these are. And again, they're slightly irregular because they were done by pencil and scissors and probably a ruler. But maybe that's what makes these blocks so perfect. They are so unique, done by hand. I'm loving it. And we're using a straight stitch You want anywhere on your stitch length between a 2 and a 3, whatever you're comfortable with. And by just chain stitching these together, I'm not having to knot or hold my thread each time I start the next block. I'm simply laying them straight, putting them through, not pinning them, but I've got them both here. I'm putting right sides together and just sewing a 1 straight line across using my 1/4 inch on my foot pedal. Excuse me, not foot pedal, this thing here, the foot for the machine. So let me know in the comments down below if you use a knee pedal, a foot pedal, or some other device to run your machine. It was kind of funny. I forgot. I learned on a knee pedal, but of course the foot pedal I just think comes with all machines nowadays. So if you use something other than a foot pedal while you use your machine, maybe you're in a different part of the world, different kind of sewing machines, enlighten me, please. Oh, and look at these. Aren't these lovely? Ah! They're so pretty. Pretty, pretty, pretty. Okay, let's keep going. Now that we have all of our pieces chain stitched together, we're going to go ahead and trim between each different one. So we're going to lift them up and unchain them by cutting that thread on each one. And trimming and separating all of our blocks. And then we're going to stack them in a pile and start chain stitching them into 4 patches. That's the fun part. Oh, I'm sorry. After we cut these apart, we're going to go ahead taking them to the ironing board. We're going to press the stitches, securing the stitches, and then we're going to open them up, press them, and then we'll be making our 4 patches. Couple of steps. Don't want to miss out on those. And just trim all your blocks apart. Okay, my friends, now we're going to put the pink and the blue against the brown and the green, and we're going to line up the seams to where they go one direction and the opposite direction. So the blue goes towards the pink and the green goes towards the brown. And we're just laying down our seams. And remember what I said, these were hand cut. You see the pencil mark here, but you're also seeing the different size. So that's why we're going to have to trim them up in the end, because each of these are off almost a 1/4 inch. Some are larger, some are smaller. Right, so today we are working on creating our 4 patch blocks. And you see the first 2 that I did, I'm really trying to decide which colors I wanted across from which colors. So we're going to make all of the blocks identical. So I have decided on the blue with the green. So this first block I will be taking apart, and I'm making all of the blocks, the brown and pink, the green and the blue. So we are just chain stitching these blocks. And again, I'm putting the blue with the green. And we're just taking these blocks and we are putting them together. We're making sure that our seams are matching. And again, we're going to trim the final block before we put it in, but we're going to take one seam one direction, one seam the other direction, hold them together, and put them under the sewing yarn. If you can. And we're just grabbing block after block. We are matching the blue with the green, and we're putting it through. We're matching our seams. We're pulling the pink and blue up, the brown and green down with our fingers, matching them right in the center to make sure they go through perfectly. And again, the seam on the bottom wants to drag behind anyway. And the pink one, you just hold up. You walk that block through with your fingers next to it to where you're keeping the seams properly. And we're just taking the next pink and blue. These, if they were all pressed properly, like I said we were going to do, they'd already be open. You just grab your brown and green, and we're going to put our pink to our brown, our seams in the center. Fold that seam forward, pull that seam backwards, line these two sides up, get your seam correctly, put it under your foot. Hold those seams as they go through, grab the next block and do the same. And we are just chain stitching these. Again, if you would have pressed these, it would go much quicker for us. But I just wanted to show you a couple while I had the camera out of how we push those seams and put them through the sewing machine, constantly holding this to where you're keeping that same 1/4 inch the entire length of that piece. And we're just going to go ahead and go through all of these the same. And we are starting to feel like we are getting accomplished. So I'm very excited about that. Grab the piece, seams in the center, pink going forward, brown and green coming back. And if they're not lined up, you're going to feel there's a piece in between there, so you have to readjust, get those seams right on top of each other, and come back to the sewing machine, and just like the last one. And we're now going to be trimming all of our 4 patches to our 6.5 inch length and trimming off the excess.